The Joe Rogan Experience.
Let me ask you this one then. What do you think about all this, the Pentagon saying that there's crafts that are coming from another world?
That's New World Order.
What do you think that is, though?
Getting people to believe in the fake alien invasion.
So what do those things are these people keep saying?
It's probably, who knows? The Nazis were scaring their people with UFOs. They made UFOs, and they were scaring people. It's like look at the timeline.
The Nazis were trying to develop some kind of an actual flying saucer,
and
right?
they were scaring people, and they were using look, we're going to save you. Look, UFOs. They were scaring them. The government's going to save you from the UFOs, right? So 1946, World War II's over. 1946-47, Operation Paperclip. That's when we took a bunch of Nazis, and Russia took a bunch of Nazis, and so 1947, Roswell. Right there. Roswell was the beginning of the UFO craze. Right after Roswell, all these comic books, Mars Attacks, in the 50s, all these shitty-ass space movies and alien movies. There was Star Trek came, but Roswell kicked it off. That was the first one that kicked it off. So wow, that's 1947. That's right when we brought in all the Nazis. Who knows, man? Maybe them Nazis were like, dude, you guys aren't scaring your people with UFOs. You dumb motherfuckers, just get on it. Boom. So that Roswell, they just take some craft, and then they get the people that they interview probably think it was real. Dude, it was a crash.
So you think it was an orchestrated crash just to freak people out?
I think
that
so.
Seems like a money talk.
Oh, you
cover it up and hide it?
When anything too expensive? When is anything too expensive for the government?
But the official answer was never that it was a craft. The official answer was that it's a fucking weather balloon, and everybody believed that.
They
showed that.
People that believe in UFOs, like myself and you, back in the day, I have a different view of UFOs now, but back then, we didn't care that they said, the fact that they said that, oh, it's just a weather balloon, we were like, oh, dude, you guys are bullshit, and you're trying to cover up the real shit.
So they're playing 3D chess.
Exactly. So that's what I think.
So you think it's drones? I'm of the opinion.
Drones, and you know how there was a little red laser point? You fuck with your cat with that shit? You go, it's incredible speeds.
Yeah, but there's some stuff. Like the Commander David Fravor one is pretty impossible.
For sure they're seeing stuff. I think Bob saw some shit. Yeah. I think they set him up. That's what I think. I think he's telling the truth, but they set him up. That's what they do. That's what William Cooper said. He was set up too. He worked for the Office of Naval Intelligence, setting up meetings, high-level meetings, and he said he thinks that he was setting up meetings and looking at documents going, oh shit, they're going to be discussing crash UFO shit and reverse engineering crash UFOs. So at first he believed it. Then eventually he realized, oh, they set him up.
So they set him up so that he'll talk about it.
He thinks they set up due to talk a lot big mouths that are drunks. That's what he thinks. They set them up and they fucking, and that's what he
set
believes.
them big mouths that are drunks because they know they're going to give out the information.
And they want them to talk.
So they get in there. They let them see it. And
they go, don't go in we'll be right back. Don't go in that room. We're going to go. And then they go in, they see like Philip Corso. Remember that guy? From the Pentagon back in the day when I was into all this shit, I would look, dude from the Pentagon is saying it. Of course it's got to be true. Dude, a Navy pilot is saying it. Of course, they're the most credible. You're but now looking back, I'm like, dude, now of course it's the dude in the Pentagon. Philip Corso said, he wrote a book the day after or something. He wrote a book about how he saw the bodies in the coffins. He saw the bodies. He goes, I was there, I saw the bodies. I mean, so either he really saw alien bodies, he walked in a room and they were in a casket and it was an open casket or something like that. Either he really saw that or he did see it and they weren't real or something and he was set up.
Imagine
they set him up.
Fucking crazy diseases would come from an alien body. Can you imagine they would just have an alien body in a room and you could do an autopsy on it with one of those stupid masks on?
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Just stop and think of that. Because think about the Europeans that came to North America and killed 90% of the Native Americans with smallpox. Imagine what the fuck aliens have. Imagine what shit that is in there. If they're a biological creature, they probably exist like we do. We're filled with bacteria. We're filled there's more E. coli in your gut than have ever been people ever. We're filled with this stuff. Mm-hmm. Imagine what kind of crazy diseases some alien body would have. that you have no immunity to. No, and just ravages the population. Everyone's dead. And these guys just have these little stupid masks on. They're cutting into this alien. Let me ask you this, because you're this big coast-to-coast Art Bell fan.
Right.
How much of that UFO stuff do you pay attention to? None. Yeah, me
Zero.
Too.
When people contact me on LinkedIn and their major credential is they do a UFO magazine or something like that, I don't add them.
I used to love that stuff. I used to think it was so interesting and intriguing until I started actually paying attention to it.
Yeah.
When I started interviewing some of the people that are involved in the movement, you find the same thing over and over again. This just wanton disregard for reality. This absolute desire to prove something instead of looking at the objective facts, proving that aliens are real, proving that we've been contacted, proving that these eyewitness testimonies are legitimate.
Let me try to cross a weird idea. Okay? Once upon a time in the 1940s, there were two guys, Konrad Lorenz and Nico Tinbergen, who got a Nobel Prize for inventing a field called ethology, which is a certain kind of observation of animal behavior. And Nico Tinbergen would go off to the coastal cliffs around northern Europe. And he would observe these seabirds. And the seabirds would go out, I don't know how many miles, 10, 30, 40 miles out to the ocean to feed and bring back food for their young. And then they would come back at the end of the day, and their nests, they'd have 200 nests next to each other, but the nests had very low walls. So when the seabird came back from her fishing and waddled herself into place, moving her hind back and forth to get in place to incubate her chicks, to warm the eggs, she'd often knock an egg out. And when the egg was knocked out of the nest, the bird would reach her beak out past the egg and then pull her beak back in toward her chest to pull the egg toward the nest, and she'd do it over and over again until she got the egg in the nest. And Nico Tinbergen had this weird idea, I wish I knew where it came from, that this is a reflex, you know, like when your doctor takes a hammer and hammers your knee and your leg shoots out and you had nothing to do with it. He figured this is the same kind of a reflex. And he figured that if you have a reflex, you need a trigger for the reflex, like that patellar hammer that hammered your knee. So he looked to see if there was a trigger that triggered this yanking your beak back in order to scoop the egg back into the nest. And he tried building artificial eggs to see if he could find out what the cues were in the egg that were causing this reaction in the bird. And finally, he got a super egg, which means, it was bigger than the normal egg, it was browner than the normal egg, and he'd put the real egg. Now, if you're the bird, that real egg has your genetic legacy. It's your genetic future. A lot is riding on that egg, a lot of you. And the phony egg. And the phony egg would attract the bird so strongly that she would ignore her own egg and yank, yank, yank with her beak until she pulled the phony egg into the nest. Oof. And they continued to do research with this kind of thing, and they discovered that they could trick some songbirds into taking a basketball into their nest. And then when the poor little birds tried to get on top of the basketball to incubate it, they would slide off, and they'd be very frustrated, and they would climb back on again and slide off again. It was cruel.
So the phony eggs like fake tits.
Those are called supernormal stimuli. And the idea is that they bring these reflexive reactions.
Yes.
Underlying what Adolf Hitler was doing, underlying what I was doing, dancing on that stage, underlying what you do in front of an audience when you get incandescent and lose yourself and something else talks through you. All that is related to some supernormal pattern in us.
Yes.
So Hitler was basically saying the world is about to end and the kingdom of God is coming. Except the kingdom of God, in his case, was the world will be controlled by the master race, the blonde and blue-eyed Aryans, and all other people will be slave people or will be exterminated. But it was this golden paradise that he was inviting the Germans to, in which they ruled the world because they were born to rule the world.
So how did you have the stimulation? Super
stimulus.
So the supernormal stimulus of this artificial egg is like supernormal stimulus of this extreme behavior at the podium that attract people in.
And basically, Hitler was saying, was talking about the equivalent of extraterrestrials. He was talking about this magic quality of the Germans. He was talking about the shared soul of the Germans and how the people in Wagner operas and the gods of the old Germans had been in the souls of these people, and he was evoking the group soul, the Zeitgeist. In this case, it's the Volkgeist, the spirit of a people. And the flying saucer people are after an end of the world in which the world will be remade. And a guy named, there was a Jewish kid from a backward town, a really backward town, who only had been trained in manual skills. And he started preaching. And he preached that the world was, as we know, it was about to end, and we were about to enter a new kind of paradise. And because he was Jewish, he figured it's got to happen at Passover. Because at Passover, you put out a cup for Elijah, and Elijah's there to precede the Savior, the guy who will save the Jewish people. So he went up to the holiest city in Judaism, to Jerusalem, and he had a dinner, this Passover dinner, and they put out the cup, and that's when the kingdom of God was supposed to arrive. His prediction of a kingdom of God arriving at that particular Passover ceremony turned out to be utterly wrong. And in fact, the Romans seized him and nailed him to a cross. And he died. It was the opposite of everything he'd predicted. But the religion he'd put together was, and the religion really that Paul put together, because Paul was an international figure. You know, he was comfortable in the global world of the Roman Empire. But what Paul put together around Jesus was a supernormal stimulus. And it evoked a supernormal response, a supernormal reflex. And the flying saucer ideas that, here we are on Earth, but there's this race that's above us that can save us, that's pushing at the same buttons. Hitler was pushing at the same buttons. The world, as we know, was about to end, and there's a new paradise, and the Germans will rule everything. So we are built to receive certain kind of stimuli. God knows how we got built that way. And when I went out in quest of the ecstatic of God, the gods inside of us, at the age of 13, I was looking for those supernormal responses in us, and for the supernormal stimuli that evoked them. And when you're doing art, when you're doing commentary, when you're doing comedy, you are hitting the buttons. You are creating supernormal stimuli. You are testing out jokes until they reach just the right shape. And you can feel in the audience what that shape is. And then you repeat that shape, knowing what its impact is going to be on the audience. I wrote a new book. It took me a long time to write all of my previous books, including How I Accidentally Started the 60s. And by the way, it isn't the same 1995 manuscript. I had 20 years of additional processing and was able to put a lot more meaning into the book. And hopefully it's still really funny. But I was able to write a book in 6 weeks. The first draft of 178,000 word book. And a normal book is 90,000 words. So this is almost twice the length of a normal book. And I was able to do it because I had told all the stories in the book. And I had felt out how the audiences responded to the stories. And I knew the words to use, and they were a well-worn path in my brain. So I simply put down on paper an oral vocabulary. But it's the audience who shapes you by giving you feedback. And eventually you perfect something so it's like Nico Tinbergen's super egg. I mean, Nico Tinbergen was eventually able to make eggs, super eggs, that had day glow on them, had polka dots on them, that were absurd, but they still had the ability, the way that flying saucer myths have the ability, to evoke this sense that there is a paradise beyond the world that we know.
Don't you think of supernormal stimulus that when you see, like a preacher on the pulpit that's screaming with confidence, when you see any of these things, like even when it comes to fake breasts, like you're seeing something like, you know what you want a woman to be good at bearing children, right, to have the right hip to waist ratio, that she's designed to breastfeed, she has large breasts,
right,
even though you know it's fake, it still hits whatever that genetic button is inside of your head.
Yep.
And the alien theme, the idea behind it, the archetype, is kind of like Space Daddy.
Right.
It's like, I know we're stupid, but just like this guy who's screaming on the pulpit has all the answers. Like, thank God someone has all the answers. Well, Space Daddy is for the atheists.
Right.
Space Daddy is for the people, you know what, I've listened to all these people down here. I think they're full of shit, but Space Daddy's going to help us out.
Yeah, well, that's the general idea.
Is that what it is?
Yes. And when you, as I said, when you fashion a joke, you're fashioning it to be a supernormal stimulus.
But Space Dad might be real somewhere, because we're dealing with extraordinary numbers.
Okay, science person.
Okay.
I have to tell you that there's only one place in which we've ever discovered any evidence of life, and it's down here on Earth. So I'm a skeptic about life being anywhere.
Right.
Now, changing to a different scientific perspective, there's this thing that I call super simultaneity, super synchrony. Mm-hmm. And when the universe starts as a rapidly expanding sheet of nothing but space and time. It's space, time, and speed. That's all it is. And when it precipitates in quarks, which is unlikely, how can space, time, and speed become particles, quarks?
Right.
The fact is that there are only something like 16 different forms of those quarks, and there are a gazillion of identical copies of each quark everywhere, and they all sprang into existence at the same time. Fast forward a couple of million years. Galaxies all are pretty much the same, and all of them spring into existence pretty much at the same time, at least the first generation of galaxies. Stars ignite within those galaxies, all following pretty much the same principles. They're all just big gravity balls. Gravity's gravity balls all the way. That's planets, that's moons, all kinds of things. So there is this tendency for the universe to do the same damn thing at pretty much the same damn time, pretty much same damned everywhere in this cosmos. And we do know that there are biomolecules, carbon-based molecules, being formed in interstellar cold gas clouds, interstellar hot gas clouds, all kinds of unlikely places in the cosmos. But those are very simple little molecules. Even though we call them biomolecules, it simply means they've got carbon. Life depends on molecules. In the case of your genome, if we took just one cell, you wouldn't miss it. You have 100 trillion others. So we took just one cell from your body, and we took out the genome, it's actually the genome. So we took out the genome, and we stretched it out because it's all tangled up in the cell. It would be 3 feet long. So there's a big distance between a tiny little molecule of ammonia in an interstellar cloud and that huge, very complex, highly ordered, 3-foot-long molecule, or single molecule, that's your genome. And we haven't learned very much at all about how you go from the simple molecules to that incredibly complex molecules. The origin of life is still one of the big puzzles. But again, because there's super synchrony and super simultaneity all over the cosmos, pretty much the same thing happens at pretty much the same time, the odds are that there are millions of other planets that have life. Those are the odds. But I set all that aside because we don't have evidence of any life, and we've been looking since, okay, I'll tell you a story. It seems to have nothing to do with anything. But once upon a time, a manager gave me an act to work with. It was Earth, Wind, and Fire. And so I read all their lyrics. I read everything about them. I studied them like a Talmudic scholar. I always did. And finally, I got to their album covers. And when I got together with the leader of the band, Maurice White, for lunch, because I hadn't yet learned to set up my boundaries and tell people I'll only work with you if I can see you in your own environment for between 1 and 3 days. That wasn't quite at that point yet. I sat with with Maurice and said, Maurice, if I've got you right, you believe that approximately 11,000 years ago, people from another civilization, someplace else in our galaxy or beyond our galaxy, came to this Earth and brought us all of our technologies and left the messages of their technologies in the pyramids. Have I got that right? And Maurice smiled, and he said, yes. So I said, okay, there's this scientist from Cornell University, and he has just had a tremendous success with a science series on PBS. It's the most watched series PBS has ever had. And he's trying to put together an organization to find extraterrestrial intelligence. So if I introduce the two of you, would you be willing to do a benefit concert for him? Because right now he's struggling to get money together. And Maurice said yes. So we tracked down Carl Sagan's summer cottage telephone number, and I put together a conference call between Maurice White and, oh God, what's his name again? Billions and billions and billions of planets. Carl Sagan.
Yeah.
And as soon as Carl got wind of where Maurice was coming from, pseudoscience, the conversation was over, because Carl was already gambling too much on ideas that could get him totally laughed out of science. So it was unfortunate, but that was the early 1980s, probably about 1980.
Didn't he want to sit down with Maurice and sort of explain what we know so far?
No, he
was
couldn't
Maurice's
afford.
Stuff? Was Zacharias Sitchin
It's
stuff?
all kinds of. It's everywhere.
Right.
You can find it all over the place.
But did he have like a source?
Not that I asked him. No,
Just
I was
was
too
like,
busy
he
trying to
just
put this thing together. And it was unfortunate. Yes, it would have been neat if the two of them had been able to sit down and talk.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
There was no, to my knowledge, there hasn't been any correlation of that. And the creatures that are described in Socorro in New Mexico and in Valençol in France, so those are three cases that I've been very involved in from the beginning, from day one, involve creatures that are about 3 feet tall, that breathe our air, recognize our signals, communicate with us in funny ways, even mentally. I mean, the witnesses describe getting images in their minds and so on, in all three cases. And what's interesting is, people can argue about Trinity all they want, like they argue about Roswell, but the case in Socorro and the case in France, in Valençol, were investigated by governments, not by the local UFO group, although the local UFO group did a good job in all those cases. But they were, in Socorro, it was first the local police. The local policemen saw the craft and the beings and described what happened. He was terrified, but, when the thing took off, he thought it was something to do with some new gadget or some work in the desert. It's an area that's still in the same state today. I've gone back there with Dr. Hynek's son, with Paul Hynek a few months ago. I've gone several times there. And so after the police, turned out the FBI was in town on another case. They had no jurisdiction in New Mexico for that particular case. It wasn't a federal case, but they helped preserve the traces, the FBI way. And the local police was happy to have them there. And then there was the state police came in and did an investigation. And then people from the base, came in with experts in explosives, experts in recovery of weapons and rockets and so on, because they thought it might be something that had come from the Trinity range that was out of its way and had crashed near Socorro, in which case they might have responsibility, including financial responsibility if something was destroyed or whatever. So this was very serious. I have the whole file. Okay, it's a big file.
Right.
Nobody's looking at it. I mean, the investigation in Washington now, they are saying, we're going to look at the cases of the last 12 months. Well, what kind of science is that? Can you imagine scientists reading this? And this is the way they are going to solve the UFO problem, by looking at vague pictures of lights in the sky for 1 year? Why don't they go back to those records? Those are federal records. Okay? The case in Valençol, 5 agencies of the French government. So this guy was a farmer. He had a field where he was growing plants to make perfume. So this was high-level, expensive crop. This wasn't just, alfalfa or something. And he goes there at 5 o'clock in the morning because, he wants to do to water the thing and so on before the sun is up, because it's going to be south of France. It's going to be very hot. You can't work in the field during the early afternoon. So he wants to be done with that. He sees this contraption, in the middle of the field, crushing the plants. And so he sneaks in, and he's paralyzed. Okay? Now, there is an egg-shaped object, just like the one, at Trinity, just like the one in Socorro. It's the size of a mid-sized truck. There are 2 creatures in front of it, human looking, 2 eyes, breathing air. They look at him, sort of amused, and one of them has something on his belt. He takes out, pointed at him, and that's when he's paralyzed. Now, he's not, as you know, I'm not a doctor, but I've gone to doctors about what kind of paralysis is that, where you can stand up and watch something, you just can't move. They said, well, there is a type of paralysis that will just inhibit the motor, motor nerves, where but you'll still be up and aware. You're not going to fall down, in a heap. And from there, he sees them going back inside the thing. The thing takes off. It takes off like a shot out of a gun, and it vanishes in midair. Okay. Now, he goes to see the gendarmes. This man is fairly wealthy. He owns quite a bit of, several fields, expensive crops. His wife is the mayor of the town. The gendarmes are going to be very careful with him because he's also from the resistance in World War II. When he was young, he joined the resistance, and the resistance in that part of France fought in the Alps against the Germans, and they were regarded as heroes of World War II. And so the gendarmes are very careful with him. There are some things he's not going to tell the gendarmes because he thinks, and I went there, he didn't want to talk to anybody from Paris. He didn't want to be on TV. He wanted to concentrate on his experience because he thought there was going to be something else. And he was aware of some of his buddies. Now, this is a part of France where people talk, but they have secrets too. I mean, historically, there are things like that in the U.S., parts where people are not going to talk to strangers.
Right.
The only reason I could go there was that I went there with a lady who was from Paris, with the government. She was with de Gaulle's government. She had the rank of ambassador, and she had a vacation home there. So we went there for 3 days, and she knew everybody there. And he told us what he thought might happen again. And he didn't want the gendarmes in with what he was doing.
Why did he think that something was going to happen again?
They evidently, and he swore us to secrecy about what it was, but evidently there was communication with the beings when he was there.
Now, so these beings just tiny, look like people. Did they have different features than us?
Just like the ones at Trinity and like the ones at Socorro. So in that book you have actually 2, 2, and 3. You have 7 creatures that are humanoid, that breathe our air, that seem to understand us. The visual, there's visual contact. Well, we can have visual contact with animals. I mean,
right.
That doesn't mean they are human or meta-human, but there is messages that come through all of that that the witnesses are reluctant to talk about in all 3 cases. So in Socorro, finally, the Air Force went there. They threw the Air Force out because the Air Force said, well, that's just a gadget, and from the base. And, that was stupid. So they finally sent Dr. Hynek there. And Dr. Hynek asked me to organize the files that were coming. I was at Northwestern at the time, working. I had done my PhD already, and I was on the staff of the computing center. And we had a small team trying to help, free, trying to help Hynek keep the files together. So we were, in communication with him the whole time. And then I put the files together, and I have a file. This is the official file.
So people were reluctant to talk about what these creatures were communicating with them. But did they talk about it at all?
It was very personal.
Very personal.
Yeah. There had been a communication that transcended their life. There was something else, something outside. So you could almost call it a sort of a religious feeling, but it wasn't. It wasn't about divinity or God specifically, but it was about the other side of life, a bigger meaning for life. That's their interpretation. It may not be. There may be other things that they are trying to communicate,
but it was found for them.
Yes.
And all 3 cases had similar stories in that regard.
And in all 3 cases, there are traces that were measured. There were, there is technology of sort. And in the case of Socorro, people came up with all kinds of ideas that maybe it was a balloon. A special balloon. Right? There were only 12 of them in the world and so on. Well, in the book, people haven't noticed it, but in the book, I was able to solve that problem because I found a transcript of a conversation with a man who was head of a motor pool at the on the Army range at White Sands. And he had given his team some instructions on, how to make sure that the motor pool was working really well because White Sands is so big. When people went home, they could get lost, at White Sands. And then how are you going to find them? I mean, there are tracks, but there is no paved road at the time. How are you going to, find them? So you can launch a helicopter the next day looking for, a lost car somewhere with a family in it. But so he made rules that they had to call periodically to report where they were when they went home, 50 miles away across the desert. So they could find them if there was something wrong with the car. He's driving home with his family. This is after the Socorro thing is done. They are all interrogating the Lonnie Zamora, the cop who was driving that thing. And he sees a light over the mountains in the southwest towards Mexico. But it's still, it's still in New Mexico, but it's in that direction. A light that's not a star, it's really bright, and the light gets brighter and brighter, and his car dies. Now he's head of a motor pool, for the base. Everybody reports to him, and they have all the, army cars and the trucks and everything else, the half tracks. So he looks at that thing. He tries to call his team. The radio doesn't work. The radio should work. The radio doesn't work. And the thing gets very bright, and then it recedes. It goes away the way it apparently came in. We don't know if it came in or if it just got bright. Okay, the car starts. He goes home, and then the next day he goes to his shop. He gets his staff together. He says, "You guys are going to take this car apart. I want to see every screw and every piece of it and every level and everything and the seats and so on. I want to see all of that on the floor. And you're going to test it, and you're going to tell me what's changed or, if anything, how that car stopped in the middle of the desert." And they couldn't find anything. And that report was an official report, that was never published. And it nails the whole thing, that this was not a balloon. This was not an hallucination. The patrolman wasn't drunk like they accused him of, or making up a story and so on.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
So what year was your incident? And you have a very, very famous incident that's corroborated by actual evidence, which is one of the rare ones. What year was it, and where did it take place?
So it was 2004, November 14th. It's really, if you draw San Diego to Ensenada, Mexico, we're about 60 miles off the coast in between the two. We're doing workups, so when we get ready to deploy, this was for the 2005 deployment. We were going at sea for November and December of 2004. So we had been out. I had just taken over the squadron mid-October, so I'd been the CO for a month. So we go out and we're putting the battle group pieces together. So it's not just the air wing, but we're on the carrier. We've got the cruiser. We've got all the support ships out there, and we're going to integrate all the defenses and train as one unit. So the exercise that we're going to do is an air defense exercise, where there's good guys, bad guys. They're all from the air wing. So the bad guys today are going to be the Marines, VMFA 232, the Red Devils. So they're going to launch, and they're going to go about 100 miles south of the ship, and we're the good guys, and we call it a 2v2, so it's two of us against two of them. And we're going to work with the USS Princeton, which is going to be the controller, and they're going to control the blue forces, and then the red guys are going to give us a presentation that they're going to try and intercept so we can stop them from getting up towards a carrier. So that's kind of the training set that we're all good. So the Marines take off first, and they start heading to the south. Now, we have no idea that for 2 weeks, the 2 weeks we've been at sea, they've been tracking these things coming out of the sky. And when I talked to the Princeton controller, he's like up to about a dozen of them. They would come down from above 80,000 feet. They'd drop down to about 20,000 feet. They'd hang out, and then they'd go straight back up after about 3 or 4 hours.
Now, when you say you've been tracking them, who specifically?
The Princeton was tracking them. They saw them on the Nimitz radar, and the E-2 could see them. Because they're out there, that radar's on all the time. And the Spy 1 system on an Aegis cruiser is, the state-of-the-art. It's probably one of the most sophisticated systems in the world.
So tell me, when something like this happens and there is some unexplained phenomenon, what do they do?
Okay, so if we were in a threat environment, they would tell us. But we're off the coast of San Diego. It doesn't come to the air wing, so we have no idea that these things are out there at all.
So they observe these things, and they never bother telling any of you guys.
That's correct.
So they just knew that these things had been visiting this area,
yes,
but they just allowed this training exercise to take place anyway.
Yeah, talking to them, for the 2 weeks, they would show up, but it was when we weren't flying. So the typical carrier schedule is, for us, it was about noon to midnight. It's a 12-hour day. There's reasons for that. It can go a lot longer. But for training, we just do the 12-hour day thing. And it's cyclic ops, so you got guys taking off and landing periodically. So we were on one of the first goes. It's noon, 1 o'clock, somewhere around there, and we take off. The Marines take off first, and my buddy Cheeks, who's the CO of the Marine Squadron, he was leading the Red Air. When he launched off the carrier first, they called him up and said, "Hey, what do you got on board?" Well, the original legacy F-18s don't have as much gas as the Super Hornets. Super Hornet's about 30% bigger. So they start talking to him about fuel, and based on how long we're going to be airborne and everything else, they go, "Hey, why don't you just go ahead and proceed to your cap point?" Because we had just taken off. And that's when the controller had come up and said, "Hey," I forget our call sign. It's probably like dealer is usually what we went. So that'd be like dealer 11. This is Princeton Control. What do you got? Say your loadout. And I kind of chuckled. I said, well, I got a CATM 9, which is basically just a blue metal tube with a seeker head for an AIM-9 IR missile. It's a training. It doesn't come off the airplane. You can beat it with a sledgehammer. That's the only way you're going to get it off, or you got to unlock the lugs with a key. So I'm like kind of chuckling. He goes, "Well, hey, we're going to cancel the training." So we're like, okay. He says, "We got real world vector, and they're going to send us out to the west." So picture if it's, if you got a clock, the Nimitz is in the middle. We're a little bit south of that, about 40 miles south, and then the Marines are about 100 miles south of the ship. About 60 miles between the two of us. So as this is all happening, my wingman is joining up, and these are F-18Fs, so there's 2 people in each jet. So it's me and my Wizzo, which is weapon systems operator, and I've got the other pilot and the weapon systems operator in the other jet. So they tell us all this, hey, we're going to real world vector, and they send us out 270 about 60 miles away from where we're going. So now we're going out even further out to sea. We have no idea what we're intercepting, and this is when the controller starts talking to us. He says, "Hey, sir, we've seen these objects. For 2 weeks, they've been coming down," and he's giving us the whole story. He says, "We need you to go investigate. We want to know what these are."
But they're asking to investigate in a jet that's unarmed.
That's cool. And there's reasons for that we don't fly. We typically don't fly with live ordnance unless we're actually going into like a combat zone or we're on a training range and we're going to shoot something. And the reason is you can go through history of the Navy or Air Force. If you put live missiles on airplanes and then you start doing training where you're squeezing the trigger, someone always messes the switchology up and someone gets shot down. It's happened multiple times. So we don't do it. There's times that we do, but it's rare. So we start flying out to the west. Now I want you to think, because the other pilot has when you talk to, it's out there, it was a female. When you talk to her, here's the kind of goes through the mindset of, hey, we're off the coast of Mexico, real world vector. We have no idea what we're going to look at. Probably drug runner, because you get the drug runners coming up the coast. So we're like, okay. So we drive out, and they're calling down ranges. So they're telling us, hey, it's 270 at 30 miles at 20,000 feet. And it's, and then you just count down the ranges. And we're talking back and forth the whole time. So they got to a point where they say, hey, merge plot, which means radars have resolution cells, range and azimuth of what the radar can actually see. Once you're inside that box, you can't tell the difference between me and the object I'm going at. We're just become one big blob. So they call merge plot, and so the other jet is on my left-hand side, and I'm going to go to a clock code to make it simple. So the object we're going to end up looking for is right in the middle of the clock, and we are at the 6 o'clock position, and my wingman is off to my left side, so she's further down with her Wizzo. So as we're looking around, we look to the right, and there's yesterday was a perfect example out here. The water is perfectly calm. No white caps. I mean, it's literally a perfect San Diego, California day. And we see whitewater, something like if you see a seamount, rock underwater when you're standing on the shore and the waves are breaking over it and you're like, what is that? It's usually because there's a rock under the water. So it looks like that, but it's about the size of a 737. It actually kind of has a shape of like a cross, and it's pointing to the east. So you've got the long part going east-west, and you got a couple of things going north and south. So as we're looking at it, because that kind of draws our eyes, we're like, oh, that's kind of odd. We look down, and the Wizzo in the other airplane comes up and says, hey, skipper, do you? And that's about what he gets out of his mouth. And I'm kind of looking at the same thing. I go, dude, do you see that? What is that thing? And what we see is this white tic-tac looking object just above the surface of the water, pointing north-south, and it's going north-south, east-west. It's just radically moving forward, back, left, right at will. And it's moving around the disturbance, the whitewater that we see.
How big is this thing?
So, over time, it's about 40 feet long. And the way I estimate that is, I got a lot of time fighting other airplanes, so it's about the size of a Hornet fuselage. So that's why I say 40 feet. And this thing's just going left. So the first thing you see when you look down, you go, and this is with our eyes, it's not sensors. right? So we're looking down at this thing, and first thing you think is helicopter, right? Helicopters typically stay below 200 feet when we're out there, and they're just driving around. We're pretty far away from the ship for a helicopter for one of ours. So what is it? So the first thing you look for is rotor wash. You know, if you've watched any TV show that starts kicking the water up, and you can see that. It's really easy to see from the air. So we're like, no rotor wash. Matter of fact, don't see any rotors. Don't see any tail rotor. Don't see any, the main rotors. We're like, that's kind of weird. So as we're driving around, we're looking at this thing. We get to about the 9 o'clock position.
How far away are you from this thing?
I'm at 20,000 feet, and it's right down on the surface, right off our right side. So I'm probably maybe a couple miles lateral and 20,000 feet, and we're just watching it move around. And
so it's very small eyes.
Not overly small. I mean, an airplane down that low, it's 40 feet. You can see pretty well. It was pretty clear. So I'm like, okay. So I said, I'm gonna go check it out. That's what we're trained to do. The other pilot says, hey, I'm gonna stay up here. And I'm like, that's perfect. So now we'll get some separation. We'll get it from different views. And the other airplane will kind of have a God's eye view of everything that's going on as I go down and check this thing out. So I start driving around, and it's still doing its forward, back, left, right. It's still pointing north-south. We get to about the 12 o'clock position. I'm just in a nice, easy descent. And a reason, because I've been asked, could you go more aggressive? You can, but when you're out over water, the water looks the same at 20,000 feet as it does at 2,000 feet. You don't, so you can easily put yourself in a non-recoverable position if you're not paying attention and you go into the water. So I got this nice, easy descent. I get to about 12 o'clock, and as I'm coming down, I could guess probably about, 18,000 feet now, a couple thousand feet below the other airplane. The tic-tac just kind of rapidly goes boop and turns, so now it's kind of pointing east-west, and now it mirrors us. So it's above the surface. We're up high. We're coming down. It starts coming up. I'm like, well, this is getting interesting. So we kind of drive all the way around a circle. I'm descending. It's coming up. And I get over to about the 8 o'clock position on the clock. And it's over at about the 2 o'clock position. Well, the quickest way, as we know as kids, to get someone, you can keep going around the circle. Nothing's going to happen. You cut across the circle. So I'm about, probably 2,000 to 3,000 feet above it. And I just kind of drop my nose aggressively, and I cut across the circle. And it's coming this way. It's because I'm trying to fly to where it's going to be, because I want to join on it. I want to see how close I can get to it.
Right.
And as I'm pulling up, it's kind of starting to cross my nose, and it starts to accelerate. And within about less than a second, as I start to pull nose onto it and it crosses right in front of me, it just goes poof, and it's gone. So I call the other airplane, and I said, hey, do you guys see that thing? And they're like, sir, it's gone. We don't see it at all. So I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. So we don't see it. We're looking. At the same time, I say, hey, let's turn around and let's go back to see what was in the water. Was there something there? So we turn around. We're right there. We haven't gone anywhere. It's gone. Water's perfectly. There's no white water, nothing. It's just blue. We're like, okay. So we turn back around. Now we're heading back out towards the east. And I tell the controller, I first said, I'm kind of weirded out. And I told my backseater that. And we start heading back, and the controller on the Princeton comes up and he says, sir, you're not going to believe this, but that thing is back at your cap point. That was our original point where we were going to hold 40 miles south of the ship. So this thing has went from wherever we were at to, about 60 miles in, maybe 30, 40 seconds. It's already over there. And and they didn't track it. It just appeared. It shows back up on their radar, and they go, it's here. So we're like, okay. So we fly back. We don't see it. We don't see it on our radar. We don't see it on any of our sensors. We do like 2 runs, and we come back to the ship and land. So as we're in we call it the PR shop. We're taking off our flight gear. One of my crews is getting ready to go out, and I think they were going to be on a tanker mission, but they had a targeting pod on board. So they launch off, and we're telling them about this before, and the backseater, Chad, says he's really determined. He's going to find this thing. So he tells the pilot, hey, we're going to find this thing. So they're just out driving around, and in the back seat of a Super Hornet, there's no stick, but there's side stick controllers, and they're to control the sensors, because that's what the weapon systems guys do. And they can change displays really fast by just hitting a button, and it'll flip from the radar to the targeting pod. And the way the system actually works is when you see something on the radar and you designate it as your primary target, all the other sensors will look at that point. So everything is kind of synced together. So he picks up a hit on his radar, and he goes to lock it up, because I watched all the tapes. He goes to lock it up, and immediately the radar can tell, it gets signals back that it's being jammed. So, and technically jamming is an act of war. It starts jamming the radar, goes into a jam extrapolate, a bunch of stuff happens on the scope. Well, he's smart enough to castle to his targeting pod, and he takes a passive track. And that's the video that you see of the Tic Tac where it's just sitting in the middle of the screen real quiet. So he does that, and he goes through, if you watch the video, if we had it, I'd go through it with you. But they go through all the different modes. So he goes, it's an IR and an EO. EO is TV. It's black and white TV camera.
We can get the video, right, online?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's get the video, Jamie. Where would you, can't show it to anybody. We can't show it on YouTube, but you can see it, and people will be able to go to it. You know what we'll do? Go to the video, and we'll tell people when we're starting, and we'll tell people what the title of the video that you get to is, and they can sync it up themselves if they're watching it.
It's publicly owned. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's publicly owned. It's American government released
Right.
it. So it is actually something in the public domain.
So you think we could play it on YouTube, get pulled?
Yeah.
100%.
You think so, Jamie?
It's a government.
Those things, yes, we should be able to, but sometimes those things get messy. So
Let's take a chance.
Okay,
let's take a chance with this one.
Okay, all right.
I know if you go, if you find a New York Times article, there's a link to it.
It's a Pentagon release.
YouTube is crazy with copyright stuff, and we've always been like 2 steps away from getting pulled off of YouTube completely. It's a real disaster. I understand from their perspective. There's a lot of legal issues they have to deal with, but
I have it on a private server. I could maybe send Jamie.
The issue, I believe, though, is the actual copyright of the video itself.
Oh, it's a Pentagon
released public
Okay,
domain.
and the Pentagon's going to come after us.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Did you find it?
Yeah, I want to find a good version of the video that doesn't have somebody
Jeremy,
else's
do you know?
copyright.
Yeah, I've got a watermark version. Let me just look it up and
this
send
one
it
has
to you.
tons of
Jeremy will
watermarks
get
all
it
over
to us.
I have to figure out how to send it to you right here. Give me a second.
Do you have? Could you airdrop it?
Yeah, but
Do
I
you
got
have
it on
copy of
a page. I got it on a page, private page. I can send Jamie.
Oh yeah, okay. Do you have Jamie's info?
No.
Yeah,
Send it.
I'll write it down.
Okay, I'll figure it
Or
out.
you can
what
send
guys
it to me, and I'll send it to him.
Okay.
That's pretty easy. Sorry to disrupt the momentum.
No, you're good.
But I think it's probably important to be able to have this the video itself, so you could just talk about it. And we're about to yank it up here. Okay, Jamie wrote it down for you. There you go.
Thanks. Give me a second to get it up.
Okay. And for people who don't know, Jeremy also produced Bob Lazar, Area 51 and Flying Saucers, and he was in here when we had Bob Lazar in, talk about Bob's experience, and Jesus, if that wasn't a game changer for me and for a lot of other people. This is a subject that it's so easy to mock. You know, this is why I think it's so important that we talk to people like you, because, like I said, just your average, everyday UFO crackpot, they believe everything and anything. Had you ever had any UFO experiences before this?
No, the iron. I tell this story. My mother-in-law, she'll be listening. She literally, every time I would go home, she would ask me, "Hey, did you see a UFO? Did you see a UFO?" And I'd be like, "No." And when I first started dating my wife, she was a big National Enquirer. She had all the supermarket tabloids, and I would always just feed her crap for it. So this happens, and I never say a word. So my friends all knew it was a great story over beers because they go, "Hey, what's the coolest thing you ever saw flying?" I go, "I chased a UFO," and they go, "Get out of here!" I go, "No, seriously," and I tell them the story, and they're like, "Dude," I go, "Yeah." So I go home, and I got asked by Lou Elizondo to do the New York Times article, which, as like anything else, I always say no. Like, it took a bunch of times to get me on your show. Jeremy kept asking, and it was...
Thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah.
It was you got to thank my contractor's wife, Angel, who we were at a party drinking, and she goes, "You got to do Rogan." I go, "What?" She goes, "It's the biggest podcast on the planet." She goes, "You got to do it." And I go, "All right, I'm going to do it. Just for you, I'm going to do this show." So
Shout out to Angel.
yeah, from New Hampshire. So my mother-in-law, we're sitting there, and I know the New York Times article is going to come out, and so it was at Thanksgiving in when the article came out, 17. So it was Thanksgiving in 2017, and everyone had kind of left the house, so it's just my wife and my in-laws. A couple of us sitting in the kitchen, and I said, "Hey, I got to tell you guys this." They said, "What?" I said, "There's going to be this article comes out in the New York Times, and I'm in it." And they're like, "Yeah." I go, "Well, I chased a UFO." My mother-in-law's like, "Ha ha!" She looks at my father-in-law. He's rolling his eyes, looking at me like, "Oh, are you serious?" And I go, "Yeah, oh, yeah." And she's like, "You never told us." I go, "I never really told anyone." I mean, my wife and kids knew the event happened, but they didn't have all the details because it's just one of those things I just didn't get into.
Is it classified?
No.
Or was it at any point in time?
No, there's a lot of rumors out there that it was classified and the ship locked down. No, it wasn't. We were never, men in suits did not show up. No one told us not to talk about it. And this is because there's a lot of other people saying other things. And I said, let's look at it. Here's the context. So in the battle group, you've got the admiral, you got the captain of the ship, the captain of the Princeton, and then you've got the other COs. So in position-wise, I'm probably, as a CO of a squadron, in the top 20 out of 6,000. And no one came to talk to me. No one came to take my tapes. No one showed up in a suit. No one told me not to talk. No one talked to any of my air crew that were involved in this. There were 6 people total involved, the 2 that shot the video and the 4 of us that looked at it for 5 minutes with our eyes. No one, nothing. It just, and I can get into how, there's a report that George Knapp got released. I call it the unofficial official report. And I had met someone, and I'm like, hey, can you find anything out? I had this incident. And normally you tell people this, they look at you like, dude, what are you smoking? And I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm tested. And they go, and they said, well, let me see what I can do. And I had got a call. I was doing some aerospace work, and I had gotten a call on my cell phone from a guy. And he said, hey, I want to investigate your incident. And I go, okay. So he did. He investigated the incident, and it was very, very thorough. I mean, if you've read it's about 10 pages long. And he tracked down everybody. He tracked down all the people that were the air crew that were involved. He tracked down the admiral. It was a pretty thorough report. And I didn't think anything of it, because the people worded it's out there, so they want to do FOIA, but it was never released in a FOIA request. I actually had the Navy call me. I'd been out of the Navy for like 6 years. And
let's explain to people that means freedom of information.
Freedom of information. So I got called by a public affairs person from the Navy and said, hey, is this Commander Fravor? And I said, yeah. And they said, hey, do you know of any documentation on your UFO incident off the Nimitz? And I said, official. And she said, yeah. I said, no, because I knew the report existed, but to me it was an unofficial because I didn't know where it went. And I had a copy of it, but because it wasn't official, well then years later I find out that the guy who actually did the report was part of the ATIP team. And I was talking to Lou Elizondo, who runs that program, and Lou showed me the documentation of the original. I think it's like 13 people that were part of ATIP, and they were FOIA exempt. And I'm like, well, that's hey, I know that guy. He's the guy that did the report, which is why it never ever came out until George got his hands on it.
How does the Freedom of Information Act exempt?
Obviously, DOD has the ability, because I'm not a conspiracy theory person at all. I mean, I'll just tell you that. And I think there's reasons that the government doesn't tell the public everything. And I don't speak for the government, but I think there's a good reason for that not everything needs to go out to the public. But most of it does. And what they do is they put a clause on, hey, for this program or whatever we're doing, which would have been an ATIP program, the work that they do and what they find it's not releasable through Freedom of Information Act. There's probably other avenues to get that. And then you go, well, what really is freedom of information? Because I got into this I was talking to someone who's a conspiracy theorist, and they said, well, so-and-so wrote, and they're not getting any information on your event. I said, so what are they going to do? They're going to call up, you're going to put in your request for freedom of information. You go, here's what I want. It goes to some poor guy at the Pentagon who's like, I have no idea what this is. And he searches around. He doesn't find anything. He looks at his bud, and I go, for you. I go, hey, Joe, you got anything on the Nimitz incident? And you go, nope. And I go, okay, well, I didn't find anything. I looked. I did my due diligence, but I'm not going to spend the next 6 months of my life doing your research project for you.
Right.
So and you get nothing, and then you assume the government's covering up when the government really isn't. They just, the guys doing the research doesn't know where it's at or doesn't have access to it.
Makes sense. Jamie, we have the video? Okay. Here we go. Now, explain what are we seeing and why are we seeing it in this particular
shade? So we'll just kind of go around it. So if you look at the OPRs operate on the top corner. NAR is narrow field of view, which is zoomed in. IR at the top middle, it means it's in infrared mode. So instead of seeing color, you're seeing temperature variations. Okay. And these things are extremely sensitive to in like tenths of degrees. They will tell you the difference to color. So it'll go from black to white. So white is hot. So if you look down in the bottom left corner, it says WHT. That's white. It means white is hot. So the object that you're looking at is hotter than the sky around it. But what you also notice is there's no plumes. Now, if you're looking at an airplane, when you get closer, you'll actually see the exhaust coming out, and there will be a really glowing plume. That's important as we look at the video. And then most of the stuff on here you really don't need to know. What you can look at is the bottom right corner. It says 19,990 and a B. That's the altitude. And if you look up in the little words where it says HDG and then LT, it's autopilot. So it's on altitude hold. It's just flying. for that. So you can go ahead and play the video. And so those two bars next to the white object, that's a passive track. So what he's done is he's commanded the FLIR to track that. So the system does is it uses, it's actually tracking, it can track pixels, and it's just basically block those hot pixels, those white pixels from the black ones. And then you're going to see now, pause it real quick. So up at the top, see it went to a white screen with a black object. This is a black and white TV mode. And if you look at the top, it says TV. So narrow in TV mode is actually, you can get closer than narrow in IR. It's literally narrow in IR is about medium in TV mode. So you can get closer with the TV mode. So as you look at it now, in this case, you would actually start to see stuff going on. And even in TV mode, because you get exhaust, the black exhaust that comes out, you'll usually be able to see kind of some of that coming out of the back, and you don't see anything. This thing's just sitting there. And if you look at the top where it says 3 right, that's the pod is looking 3 degrees right of the nose of the airplane, right? So he's just flying along. The bottom numbers, don't worry, those are time. So it's 41:56. So go ahead and hit play. And what he's doing is Chad's going through all the different modes because he's like, oh, I got it. And he's going to try and see the best video that he can get. Now, there's rumors that this video is like 10 minutes long. No, what you're looking at is the entire video. Now, notice where it says 99.9. Mm-hmm. So hit pause real quick. What that means is while he's got the pod, the targeting pod, because that's his primary sensor right now, the radar is still trying to look at this object and trying to range it, and the radar can't get ranging on it. So the object is doing something to say, I'm not giving you back, because it's just a Doppler radar, just like a police radar is a Doppler. It's trying to get a ranging on you, and it can't do it. So when it says 99.9, the radar cannot see this object right now. It's not allowing it to get ranging.
And I think that's super important the way he explained it to me. Active jamming compared to passive jamming. This is a technology that is actively jamming this system.
Rather than like stealth aircraft, which is the shape and the texture of the...
Yeah, it's... Because everyone thinks stealth is invisible. It's not. It's a technology to basically make it harder for radars to see you. And that's the whole thing. If you look at airplanes that are nose on are harder to see than airplanes at the side. It's kind of like, think of a barn door. If you're looking at the whole barn door, it's really easy to see. If I turn the barn door sideways where it's really thin, it's going to be a lot harder for you to see it.
Got it.
So that's the easiest, most basic way to look at this. So keep going. You can play again. And you can look, the airplane is still sitting at 20,000 feet. It's doing 250 knots. He's going to go through different modes and try and lock it. And it's just kind of sitting, and all of a sudden, as the video goes on, I think it's 1.5 minutes long. See, it's going to try and reacquire. It recenters the pod. So it's slowly drifting to the left. The Hornet is still going the same heading, just kind of hanging out. And they're just filming this thing. And then when they get close, it's going to zing off the left-hand side. When you see it on a full, because this, you think digital, you'd be able to get a 1-for-1 copy. Unlike, when you copy your album to a cassette, you lose a little quality. Well, you still do in digital world. And off it goes to the left. And that's pretty fast to leave that field of view. When we have big monitors that we look at these when they come back, so we're looking at the original tapes. So
play the end of that again, please, Jamie. So when it's taking off, how fast, when it just leaves the field of view and takes off to the left, how fast is that going?
I would say fast. It's an estimate. If we had ranging, you could obviously do the triangle and go, hey, because we know how big the field of view is. But for something to leave the field of view that fast with the pod just staring is pretty fast. I mean, it's like out of here.
Like nothing?
No, because we can't. I don't care what airplane is. So let's just use the F-22 Raptor. That's probably it's probably the best airplane in the world right now, performance-wise. It can't take off like that, especially if it's a hover. I mean, you're talking something that's just sitting in space in the wind, and then it just all of a sudden accelerates. Airplanes don't work that way.
And it's not an exhaust plume.
Notice there's none. And when you go back to the IR
at the end,
even in the IR,
see, there's IR zoomed in, and there's no. You would see a plume if that was an airplane.
It's creepy how it takes off.
Yeah.
With act jamming, it's intelligently controlled. There's no rotors, there's no plumes, there's no exhaust, there's no tail fin, there's no tail number. This thing goes from a standstill, takes off. It's a propulsion system we don't have in our inventory, and no other nation does. That's how it's understood by the government.
Now, so if the fastest plane on Earth was trying to do that same maneuver, this system would be able to track it?
It would stay with it until it got to the limits of the pod, as far as looking to the left. But
right.
And the radar would see it. I mean, when you get close enough, you're gonna, everything becomes visible because you get burned through with radar and how radars actually work. This one is, you tell me, but this was performance beyond. I mean, it's like when we saw it disappear when it flew in front of my nose. I mean, I'm talking something, I'm within a half mile of it, looking at it. And it gets in front of me and just disappears. So we'll just go to something that everyone knows is fast. Let's just say SR-71 that's doing Mach 3. The visibility is 50 miles. So even at 35 miles a minute, I'm going to be able to see this thing turn into a little dot as it goes off into the horizon for probably a minute. The thing that we saw disappeared in a second. Just gone. And that's from two different angles. Remember, the other airplane's 8,000 feet above me because we get close to it at about 12,000 feet. So the other airplane's above me looking down, and when it disappeared, I said, "Do you guys see it?" And they said, "No, it's gone." It just literally was poof.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
I was watching TV. This happened a couple of weeks ago, and I started laughing because all that popped into my head was you when they released the footage of those UFOs. I'm like, Joe Rogan is going to talk about this the next day.
Happy. I'm so happy. I love it.
But wasn't that released a year ago?
Well, it leaked. But
it was
then
leaked.
The Pentagon finally, look, in the middle of the pandemic, what a great time to just admit there's UFOs. Because one of the things that I said on my Instagram, I was like, in any other time in history, if the government came out and said there are flying saucers that defy our understanding of propulsion and physics, the world would go crazy. But in 2020, people are like nothing.
Has it seen those pilots?
Well, I've had one of them on here.
Oh, so he's a believer.
Commander David Fravor. I had him on the podcast, and he was explaining the whole thing to me, like his experience off the coast of San Diego, running into one of these things. I mean, there's people that are debunkers, but they need to understand this is not just visual. They had very specific, like actual real data, including radar. They track these things. They use sophisticated military tracking. These are real objects. This is not like there's a lot of dummies out there that want to debunk everything. Mm-hmm. And they're just as much of a religious person as someone who's a true believer. They're a true believer that everything can be explained. Well, not everything can be explained. No. And these things can't be explained. When they're explaining how these things traveled at these, like they went from like 6 feet off the ground to 60,000 feet in a matter of a couple of seconds. They fly in some way that these military aircraft pilots can't explain. They don't understand it, and they don't know what they are. Now, whether they're from another planet, that's never been proven. They might be interdimensional. They might be something from here. They might be some super sophisticated, top of the food chain, top secret stuff that they're exposing these people to just so they freak out and like, let's see if they can get an explanation for this. Let's launch these things and have them fly past people at these preposterous rates of speed and see what the reaction is.
Do you think those type of secrets, if there are higher than the president? Do you think there's an organization that's above presidents?
100%. 100%. Here's why. Come and go. They come every 4 years. We're going to trust some dipshit who wins a popularity contest. Trump's a perfect example of that. Here's a guy who's not even a politician. Lifelong businessman who wins a popularity contest, gets to be in the most powerful office, most powerful position really the world's ever known. President of the United States, Commander-in-Chief of the greatest army this entire planet has ever seen. You're going to tell him?
The Joe Rogan Experience.
There have been many instances of sightings off the coast of California of things that plunge into the water or escape from the water and take off into space.
So with the field propulsion system, as Commander Fravor's describing, as Lazar described, it doesn't matter the medium of space, air, or water. There's no resistance, no splash. I mean, this goes back to, when Christopher Columbus reported a UFO sighting.
He did?
Oh, yeah. This idea, so this has been around. Anyway, this idea, boom, that you can go through these different mediums.
Pause for a second. Christopher Columbus had a UFO sighting?
Yeah, it's a written account, so it's like...
Find that.
No video.
It's not going to be a video.
This is bullshit. I'm shocked.
But
it's bullshit. Then.
Well, see, but that's what's so cool. So Commander Fravor's encounter It's not the most documented. It's not the most dramatic. However, it has had the most impact out of any sighting because of his credibility and the mere fact that the New York Times picked it up with video footage, radar evidence, and somebody who is as credible as Commander Fravor. It has changed the dynamic of the way the government responds. New Navy protocols because of Commander Fravor coming forward. There are closed-door congressional and Senate briefings. He's been part of them. He's admitted that before. There's a new study about UFOs because of this encounter. It's so much evidence, has so much power to it compared to other ones. So Christopher Columbus, great, cool story. Somebody wrote it down. Who knows if he even wrote it down? We have highly documented cases. This one has changed our culture. And that's what's so cool. People are talking about it differently.
So this is a good story. This is true. So I was sitting at home, and usually when people try and find me, they get my wife's cell phone because it's the first one on the cell phone bill, and it's all in my name. So I see this call from California, and I'm like, and normally I don't answer them, and it's her phone. I'm like, who's calling my wife? Because that is me. So I answer it, and this lady says, hey, is Commander Fravor there? And I go, who's calling? And she goes, well, I'd like to talk to Commander Fravor. I go, who's calling? And she says, hi, I'm a 79-year-old woman, and I would just like to tell him my story. I go, well, you're talking to him. And she goes, I've never in my life told anyone this. She goes, I grew up, my dad was in the Navy. She goes, he was stationed in Rhode Island at first when she was a child. She said, we were walking, her and her mom were walking on the beach, and they saw these weird lights. So that kind of got her into that, UFOs. She goes, a few years later, they had moved to San Francisco. So I imagine Treasure Island, because at her age, it would have been, probably in the 50s. She said her dad was working as a Navy liaison to the agency. And he came home one day and he had a telegram in his hand. And she goes, for some reason, he let me read it. She's telling me this story. And I said, well, what did it say? She says it basically said, hey, unidentified objects going in and out of the water, and it had a latitude and longitude in it. And he looked at her, she goes, and I'm a child, and I always remember this. She says, he looked at me and said, we get these all the time, and it's always in the same area. And I go, of course, well, you got the telegram? She goes, of course not. He had to take it back to work. I said, you don't have to remember that latitude, longitude. She said, no. She goes, but you seem to be so credible and believable. She goes, I wanted to tell someone the story that I've never told anyone in my life. So that's what you're starting to see is people that, very credible. They're not, they're not crazy. They're not making stuff up, but they're coming out and going, hey, I've had these experiences. And I've got a lot of that from over the last 2 years where people just find my email and send me stuff saying, hey, this happened to me, or I saw this. And there's some things that are explainable because I got asked to tell this. So, because I have a sick sense of humor at times. So, like I said, I had all these quals. So we used to fly, they don't do it right now because it's a little bit dangerous, but we used to fly night vision goggles, low altitude in Hornets, right? So when you put on night vision goggles, they amplify light like a lot. So you can see a campfire like 50 miles away. So we used to do it. The good spots were down in like El Centro, California. There's a range that there's some bombing ranges, but people go camping in the Superstition Mountains, which is kind of north and west of Imperial by, I forget what it is, the Springs. It's real pretty in the desert. It'll come to me in a minute. So we would go out at night flying around on goggles, and you'd see a campfire, and you go, oh, UFO time. And then you get the airplane going about 600 knots, and then you pull the power back to idle. So you can't hear it. And you get zinging towards the fire. Well, you turn the lights are all down because we're in restricted areas, so we can do that. And there's lights on it that you can only see if you're on night vision goggles. So the other airplanes can see us, but no one else can see us. Then you go zinging at it. And then right when you get to the campfire, you pull the airplane into the vertical, you stroke the afterburners, you let them light off, you count to 3, you pull them off, and then you just go away. Instant UFO reporting. Sitting out in the desert, it's all quiet, and then all of a sudden there's a lure, there's lights in the sky, and they go away and it's gone.
The campfire.
So you would do that just to fuck with campers?
Yes.
How rude.
Yes, I did it, but like I said, we have a sick sense of humor.
Yes, I'm sure.
So some things are explainable because I guarantee there were phone calls made on some of the stuff that we did.
And you're not the only one who's ever done that.
Oh, I'm not that creative, but it's just, you think about it and you go, because people go, I saw this or I saw that because I've got stuff like that. And I go, yeah, I used to create stuff like that, just not tell it.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Is it amazing to you, as spent so long thinking about otherworldly visitors, that now they're releasing all this information and no one really cares?
The world is in such chaos.
No
now.
one cares.
No one cares.
I couldn't
if
care
this
less.
happened in the middle of the Obama administration when everything was going great, it would be giant news.
And what is the news even, that the Pentagon just can't account for all these unidentified flying objects?
Yeah, they are.
Okay.
There's some of them that could easily be drones because they're not moving at spectacular speeds.
Right.
They're just sort of like hovering over aircraft carriers. Those could be drones. They could be some new style of drone or some new kind of technology that maybe some foreign government has. But there's other ones that were spotted by Air Force pilots and then tracked, and they have detailed data on the speed of these things. They have video of these things going with what appears to be thousands of miles an hour, instantaneously accelerating with no visible propulsion system, no heat signature. They don't know what the fuck this is.
Yeah.
And this is from 2004 off the Nimitz. Commander David Fravor, who was a fighter jet pilot, is like rock solid credentials. You can't. Yeah, and I've talked to the guy. I had him on my podcast, and even better, he was on Lex's podcast, and Lex did an even better job than I did, and talked to him for 2+ hours about this. And the guy's incredibly credible. That fucking thing, whenever he was tracking, went from the Nimitz tracked it. They tracked it on radar. They tracked it with the onboard sensors, the things that they use for targeting enemy crafts. They tracked this thing from the Nimitz. It went 80,000 feet above sea level to 50 feet in a second.
That's crazy.
They don't know what the fuck it is.
They don't know what it is.
They know that it was jamming their radar. They know it was jamming them, and then it moved when it took off at insane rates of speed. They couldn't even watch it. It just, it's gone. And then it re-emerged at the cat point. The cat point is the predetermined location where the jets are supposed to scramble to during this exercise. So it's literally saying, I know where you guys are going.
Right.
You're going over here.
Right.
Whatever the fuck it is, who knows? But does that mean that it's from another planet? No. It could be some fucking insane technology that the military's developed.
That we don't know. It could be
because
DARPA.
have you seen that shit where the military, there's patents for UFO type, see if you can find what those are, because they're developing, or at least they've attempted to develop some sort of gravitational drive that would indicate that at least there's been some thought about developing a craft like that. Now, if you put a person in one of these things and you shot them off thousands of miles an hour, they turn into jello.
Right.
But who says it's a person?
Who knows?
We got a rover on Mars now
Right.
taking pictures. There's a helicopter attached to it.
Right.
You got high-resolution photographs from Mars. Here it is. Docs show Navy got UFO patent granted by warning of similar Chinese tech advances. This is what I'm saying. Patent document indicates that the U.S. and China are actively developing radical new craft that seem eerily similar to UFOs reported by Navy pilots. Now, if this is like on paper somewhere where they're trying to get patents and they're telling you the Chinese the military already has something like this, what we're getting is years later.
Right.
They've been probably developing shit like this for decades.
Forever.
So they
Yeah.
probably have some sort of working thing that can move in extraordinary ways.
We are not going to care until Mars Attack style raid on the White House, like that movie. Yeah, if you're not going to, if you don't land with ray guns and start blasting people, I don't even give a shit. Like, no one's going to care.
We're real weird with it now.
Yeah.
I've always said that if aliens are real, Earth is the Tijuana of outer space.
You're not kidding.
And they come down here when they're fucked up and they want
Right.
to see a show.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Trying to save Tijuana.
No,
no
nobody's thinking about it. Yeah, it's a place to go, and they mention it in a movie.
Yeah.
every now and
You
then.
go see a donkey show.
Yeah.
Robert Rodriguez features it in a vampire movie, and then you get out of there.
It's interesting. It's the one conspiracy that I've never gotten into that much because there's just, the information is so tough to come by that I've just always said nothing would surprise me. Nothing would surprise me.
There's something going on. There's something going on, but what that something is remains to be seen.
Have you seen that video in Black that walk into this? It's just two very tall, weird dudes that walk into like a hotel and then leave. Jamie, you can find it easily, and it's just these guys that were supposedly like,
something weird happened, and supposedly there are guys that come in like after something weird happens and like shut it down, and they're both very tall and very. And I don't know if it's fake or not. I don't think it is fake though, but I don't know. It could be fake.
Where can one find this video?
It's on YouTube or something. Jamie can find it. It's the real Men in Black. It's like the real, whatever. Supposedly there was something that happened where, I don't know. Somebody went in after it, like somebody had to go respond to something, and these two like weird looking dudes came in. Very strange. There's got to be a Men in Black. If we know about, there's got to be some part of the government that deals with that.
Well, there's two schools of thought, right? One school of thought is that the government is way competent to ever keep anything from anybody.
That's not true.
That's not true.
Right.
And there's other schools of thought where you're like, no, there's a perceived buffoonery that's attached to some level of government because there's a lot of people in government that are fucking idiots.
Right.
But there's a lot of people that work at UPS that are fucking idiots.
That are idiots, yeah.
But if you get to the highest levels of the organization,
they know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to send to the highest levels of the CIA or the NSA, you're going to probably be brilliant.
Right.
What are the odds that you're not?
Right.
You're probably going to have a
a good person. No.
The best people.
But you're
going to have a deep
be smart.
understanding
of what's going on.
Of foreign policy and how to manipulate things and
Did you not find Black video?
Not really. I found something, but it was like it was animation and stuff. It wasn't really like a hotel. So.
No, I don't know if it was a hotel. There was just two guys that walked in and then left, and they looked very
The video
strange.
I found is it's like a description of events of like that happening. I didn't find
Okay,
actual video. I'm looking.
Well, it's always been one of those things of UFO folklore, right? That these Men in Black folks,
Yeah,
they look oddly fake. They look like fake-looking skin when
Right.
they show up.
Yeah.
But that's what I would do. If I was going to go interview some guy about UFOs, you know what I would do? I'd put like weird white makeup on. And I'd dress in a black suit and I'd ask him strange questions while wearing sunglasses.
Yeah.
And I'd have him freak out.
Why not?
Why not fuck with him?
Yeah.
Why not leave him to the point where what he's going to tell all of his friends is so crazy, no one's going to believe it?
Well, that's part of, I think, what a lot of it is.
Imagine if you have an aircraft that's shaped like a pyramid, right? And you're flying it over Philadelphia.
Yeah, here it is.
Okay.
That's all it is. I don't know what this
Yeah.
is,
Dudes wearing suits. But it is.
To me, that proves it.
Yeah, what is that?
It
Real Men in
proves
Black.
it to me.
What does this say?
That proves it to me.
Well, what is the Niagara Falls? Show canceled. What is that?
Immediately.
Okay.
What is he saying?
Finally, we have perhaps the most conclusive evidence of the real Men in Black. A hotel in Canada, and the manager was a little disturbed when his bellboy informed him that the previous day the hotel had been visited by two tall men dressed completely in black who demanded to speak to him.
Maybe they were Johnny Cash fans.
Yeah.
What the fuck does that mean? So they're just this is what's ridiculous conspiracy theories. Those are
But they
two
didn't
guys
I
wearing
think they didn't
suits.
have eyebrows.
I have a suit. Do you have a suit?
Yes, but I don't think they had eyebrows. Now that
what is this? They had no eyebrows? Oh, see, that's what I would do. I would fucking shave my eyebrows or put some makeup on over them so that I look like a weirdo, and then make them real uncomfortable when they're telling their friends, "Man, you're not gonna fucking believe this. Look at these guys."
Here they are.
Okay, that's got to be from a movie, right? What is that?
know.
What is that image from? Let that guy play it out. Let's
And
hear.
that concludes our look at the Men in Black. But
Oh,
remember,
come on,
guys,
that guy's
this
got
has
striped
been a
ties.
look at just a handful of real-life accounts involving these mystery men. There are many more stories to look at online.
Oh, well, as long as they're online.
It was a British guy. There's the Men in Black. There are many mysteries to look at.
As long as there's more stories.
Yeah, online.
That's
There's
all
more
that's
content online we can sink our teeth into.
Catch new episodes of The Joe Experience for free only on Spotify. Watch back catalog JRE videos on Spotify, including clips. Easily, seamlessly switch between video and audio experience. On Spotify, you can listen to the JRE in the background while using other apps and can download episodes to save on data cost, all for free. Spotify is absolutely free. You don't have to have a premium account to watch new JRE episodes. You just need to search for the JRE on your Spotify app. Go to Spotify now to get this full episode of The Joe Rogan Experience.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Well, that's a good thing. That's the more sensitive you are, though, the more you have to consider all the possibilities, and that's what could keep you up.
Right, or send you down the UFO wormhole. Right?
We talked about that right before the podcast. Yeah, there's this guy that's coming on. His name's Dr. Robert Schock, and he's a geologist from Boston University. And he's worked on, there's some real scientists that believe it's entirely possible that the Sphinx and a lot of the construction in Egypt is far older than they think it is.
I know all about this.
Do you know all this?
I know all about the rain runoff and how much erosion has occurred around the base or around the pit and it absolutely couldn't have been done, depending on like the way the Sphinx is built, where it's located, the siting, where its level is far older. So
yes, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 9,000 plus BC, because that's when back then the Nile Valley was a rainforest and somehow or another became a desert. And this guy's legit Boston University professor, geologist, and he's traveling all over the place. But he's here for some UFO conference, and the UFO people wanted him to mention the UFO conference, and I'm like, fucking Christ with UFO conferences. You guys don't have anything. If you had something, it would be, what are you going to get together in a fucking Marriott somewhere and show some blurry picture of some fucking hubcap that someone chucked up into the air? Like, there's nothing. Everything that they look at falls apart under scrutiny. There's like a few videos.
Okay, I'm going to back on
Please
this.
Please do.
Let's just say, what about, do you know the Disclosure?
Yes, Disclosure Project. Yes.
Okay, there was their first press conference when they got all the, I tend to be impressed by the military, ranking members. I'm sort of like, if you were guarding missile silos and you say you saw something hover above it and deactivate, I'm probably going to check that out a little harder. And there were just so many people that stood up, in that press conference and said that they absolutely had seen evidence, met extraterrestrials, seen the crafts, like in hangars, etc.
Yep.
And to me, like they didn't look like they had that much imagination. They're the kind of people that I didn't think could really. I mean, did you find that convincing at all?
No. Here's why.
No, they're just like a whole bunch of liars, a whole line of liars.
Steven, right? The Disclosure Project is Stephen
Greer's thing.
It's
not so much about him. Yeah. He doesn't appeal as much as the people that he brought on, who were mostly military guys.
The thing about military, anybody who's in the military is a person. If you get 100 people together, one of them's out of their fucking mind. If you get 1 million people, you've got a shit ton of people that are out of their fucking mind that are running around that want extra attention. One of the best ways to say one of the best ways to get extra attention is to say you've had some extraordinary experience that separates you from the pack. It's one of the main points of delusion that people that are really out of their fucking mind will want to point to. I see things in people. I can read auras. I can tell. I'm a psychic healer. I'm an intuitive person. They all have this thing that separates them from the herd without any work whatsoever. I feel like a lot of these people are that. They want attention. And so they tell these extraordinary stories. Now, when you said they're not creative, that's a very astute point, because they all have the same fucking story. Because it's the same story that's been going on forever. They just repeat shit they've already heard. Most of these people, I think, are full of shit. I think it is entirely possible that UFOs have been here. Entirely possible that people have seen UFOs. Entirely possible. But a lot of those people, my fucking bullshit radar just goes off. Bang, 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 bang,
really?
bang, bang, bang. Yeah. I've talked to too many of them. When I did that television show, Joe Rogan Questions Everything, and I met with UFO people and Bigfoot people, I was telling you before the podcast, it cured me. Because I got to be around those people for hours and just talk to them with no cameras on. I'm like, oh, you're fucking crazy, or you're delusional, or your way of looking at things is not objective, or you're talking to me because you want to convince me of something. You're not just communicating the ideas that are actually in your head. You're pitching me some sort of a speech. You're like, you've got some sort of a performance you're doing for me.
Oh,
and I smell it. And as a performer, I smell it. I'm like, this is nonsense. You're telling me nonsense. They would tell, well, you want evidence? I'll back a truck up and show you the evidence. I'm like, where's your fucking evidence? You don't have any evidence. You should have
brought it today. I mean, like, exactly. Here's the thing. Did they seem off kilter in everything else they talked about?
Yes.
Okay, so they
everything.
did. That
Relationships, jobs, they're all screwballs. They're almost all screwballs. The people that are most convincing are the people that see these orbs flying around.
The pilots.
Yeah. Well, the reason why they see these things is there's a real phenomenon called ball lightning. It's absolutely real. And it's caused by various weather conditions, and they think that it can even be caused sometimes by the right weather conditions and the shifting of tectonic plates, that somehow or another the friction. Yes. And that these ball lightning, if you've ever seen videos of it, it's phenomenal. It just flies around. They've even had it inside airplanes. Somehow or another, ball lightning has shot down the aisle of an airplane while it was in flight.
I've actually seen it.
Have you really?
I've actually
Where have
seen
you
ball
seen it?
lightning on a flight that was struck by lightning.
Whoa.
It was pink. And it sounded like a giant BB gun hit a tin can. Oh, yeah.
Whoa, you were in a plane that was hit by lightning? Holy shit. That's intense.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
The 2017 New York Times article, in my mind, made that was a big shift, because when the New York Times is reporting about it and saying that this is major news and this is real and there's video evidence that they can't ignore, when you talk to high-level people at the government and people like Commander David Fravor, who had that infamous spotting off of the coast of San Diego, when you hear about people like that are very reputable, it starts to change the conversation in a lot of people's eyes.
Right. See, it used to be that one person would see something in the sky and say, look, Martha, look, there's something up there. Now things have changed. Now we have multiple sightings by multiple modes. That is the gold standard for looking for these objects. Not just one person, but several people that are reputable. Not just radar, but visual sighting, infrared sensors, telescopic evidence. Now we have multiple sightings by multiple modes. And so the burden of proof has shifted. It used to be the burden of proof was on the people who believed in UFOs. They saw something, prove it. Now the burden of proof has shifted to the Pentagon, to the military. Now they have to prove that these aren't extraterrestrial. And so I think there's been a sea change in the last just several years. 50 years ago, there was a congressional hearing, and it was coming out of Project Blue Book. And there was a lot of laughter and a lot of jokes about little green men in outer space. 50 years ago, that's the way it was. Now, things have changed. People are looking at, are they a threat militarily? What kinds of sensors do we have? What kind of metrics do we have? We now have, frame by frame, an analysis of these objects. These objects travel between Mach 5 and Mach 20. That's 20 times the speed of sound. These objects can zigzag, and we can measure the G-force inside this object. The G-forces are several hundred times the force of gravity. In other words, any living person's bones would be crushed by these objects, so they're probably drones of some sort. These objects can drop 70,000 feet in a few seconds. Think about that. It can drop a tremendous distance in just a few seconds, and they can go underwater. This is something that we didn't realize before, but yes, they can actually go underwater. And they also move without creating an exhaust or breaking the sound barrier. So these are things that we can now document frame by frame looking at these videotapes.
So, what was the shift? And how did you feel about UFOs, say, like 10, 15 years ago?
Well, this giggle factor, and it's the third rail, of course, of your scientific reputation, if you believe in these things. But the evidence is accumulating over the last several years. Now, when I was first approached by Carolyn Corey, the producer of this film, A Tear in the Sky, I was skeptical. I said to myself, come on. I mean, 5 days? 5 days you're going to look for flying saucers in the sky? What happens if the aliens are camera shy and they don't show up in 5 days? So I was pleasantly surprised when they actually found something. They actually have photographic evidence of objects that can gyrate just the way the Pentagon has said. And so we now have a sea change. A center of gravity has changed with regards to looking at these objects. We no longer simply look at one individual seeing something in the sky. No, we demand hours of videotape, multiple sightings by multiple modes. That's the gold standard now.
So what do you think is happening? Do you think that this is something that maybe another government from another country has created that far surpasses our abilities, or do you think that this is coming from somewhere else?
Well, the Pentagon has listed, I think, 5 different options. One option, of course, is that they're weather balloons or something that's an artifact of our space program. Maybe a piece of rocket that is plunging back into the Earth's atmosphere. That's one category. Another category is anomalous weather events. They happen, and they have to be looked at very carefully. But the last option is other. That is not just the Russians or the Chinese, because these objects apparently can gyrate faster than what the Chinese and the Russians can muster, but it opened the door to the possibility of other. They didn't specify what other was, but you can fill in the dots yourself. Now, one possibility for other is hypersonic drones. We see that in warfare now. The Russians, in the Battle of Ukraine, is actually using hypersonic drones to hit targets inside Ukraine. To be hypersonic, you have to go faster than Mach 5. Anything faster than 5 times the speed of sound is called hypersonic. And so the Russians are now fielding hypersonic drones in warfare. But you see, this is something just in the last few months. These sightings, they go back decades into the past, with objects executing these gyrations decades ago. And that's why you have to take them seriously.
So the Commander David Fravor event that we talked about off the Nimitz, that was 2004. Do we have an accurate understanding about military capability in terms of like drones and propulsion systems from 2004? Or are there things that are classified that we are not going to have access to? Like, is it possible that, 18 years ago, they had the capability to have a vehicle or a drone move this way, that just that information has just not been released?
2 years ago, the United States military admitted that it stopped working on these hypersonic drones. Why? They're unstable. They zigzag. And that's why the Russians have put a premium on this technology to evade our Star Wars program. The Russians wanted a rocket that can maneuver and therefore outwit a stationary Star Wars system designed to shoot down these drones.
Right.
So that's why the Russians have put a priority on this, and they've now fielding it in warfare. We actually see them as a military weapon. 2 years ago, the United States military stopped its program. They're too unstable. They were not reliable, and it was not worth the amount of money to put into it, because the military was invested in the Star Wars program, not the anti-Star Wars program. But because Vladimir Putin announced the hypersonic drones, then the United States military said, oops, nope, we have to get into the game too. So now the United States is also working on hypersonic drones, as well as the Chinese. So the Chinese, the Russians, and the Americans are all working on these things. But you can see how primitive they are. We're talking about objects that defy the known laws of aerodynamics with a technology beyond what we have today. And so that's why people are scratching their heads. Whose are these things if they're not the Chinese, the Russians, or the United States?
One of the main points of contention is the lack of visible propulsion method, right? There's no, essentially, there's no heat signature. There's nothing that we understand to be present that normally exists when something is going at a tremendous rate of speed.
That's right. Only that, these objects create no sonic booms. When you exceed the sound barrier, you create a gigantic boom that is then shatters windows and can be heard miles around. These objects can effortlessly break the sound barrier and not create a sonic boom. And they don't create any exhaust. We don't see any exhaust trail from these objects. So either they're an optical illusion of some sort, or they have a set of laws of physics beyond what we can muster. Now, if they are an optical illusion, if an object were to move in front of your eyes, traveling at a very slow velocity, but you don't know how far they are away, you may think that object is very far away from you, traveling at enormous velocities. So a weather balloon drifting in front of your eyes can simulate an object traveling at hypersonic velocities if you think that weather balloon is far away from you. So how do you tell the difference? Well, you look at wind patterns. It turns out that many of these sightings, these objects, defy the direction of the wind. If they are weather balloons that you confuse with a flying saucer, then they would be moving with the direction of the wind. But these objects do not do that. These objects can go against the direction of the wind. Not only that, but we have multiple sightings. If an object is very, very far away, if an object is close to you, but you think it's far away, then it's traveling at an enormous velocity while it's actually just drifting in front of your eyes. How do you tell the difference? By having multiple sensors, radar, infrared sensors, visual sighting. Then you can tell how far this object is away from you, and then you can say that, no, it's an optical illusion. Well, we do that now. We have multiple sightings of these objects. By radar, we know how the velocity, the distance. Each time it comes out to be real. And so that's why we're scratching our heads. Who has this capability? And the answer is, we don't know.
Is there anything that's theoretical that you're aware of that could be applied, like from some other planet or some other galaxy or whatever, that something that maybe we have theorized that could be responsible for the way these things are able to move?
You know, when I talk to my friends who are physicists like myself about these things, they sort of like laugh, giggle, their eyes roll up to the heavens, and they say something very simple, that a rocket using conventional means would take 70,000 years to reach us from the nearest star. Therefore, these objects cannot exist. 70,000 years for a Saturn rocket traveling at 25,000 miles per hour to go from a nearest star to the planet Earth. That's why most scientists disregard these sightings, because they defy the laws of Einstein.
But isn't that kind of like saying, like, you can't, you know how long it would take you to get a horse from Los Angeles to Sydney, Australia? Isn't that kind of like saying that?
Exactly. And that's why I say that assumes that these aliens or whatever are maybe 100 years more advanced than us. But open your mind to the possibility that they are 1,000 years more advanced than us. 1,000 years is nothing compared to the age of the universe.
Right.
The universe is about 13 billion plus years old. That's how the age of the universe. And so the age of a civilization, just a few thousand years ahead of us, that is just a blink of an eye to the universe itself. And once you go to higher energies, the laws of physics begin to break down. The laws of Einstein and the laws of the quantum theory break down at something called the Planck energy. Why is that important? That's what I do for a living. I work on something called string theory, which lives at the Planck energy. The Planck energy is 10 to the 19 billion electron volts. That is a quadrillion times more powerful than our most powerful atom smasher outside Geneva, Switzerland. Any civilization that could harness the Planck energy would be able to become masters of space and time. Space and time as we know it become unstable at the Planck energy, which is far beyond anything that we can muster here on the planet Earth. So we physicists theorize, how advanced do you have to be to access the Planck energy? Well, we rank them. The Kardashev scale says that there could be type 1, type 2, or type 3 civilizations. A type 1 civilization is maybe 100 years more advanced than us, to maybe 1,000 years, sort of like Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon. They control the weather. Volcanoes, earthquakes, anything planetary, they control. That's type 1. Then there's type 2. Type 2 is stellar. They harness the power of an entire star, like Star Trek. Star Trek would be a typical type 2 civilization where they manipulate entire stars. Then there's type 3. Type 3 is galactic. They roam the galactic space lanes. They play with black holes, like the Empire of the Star Wars series, would be a typical type 3 civilization. Then the next question is, what type do you have to be to harness the Planck energy? The energy at which space and time become unstable, where wormholes may develop, gateways through space and time, portals through empty space. You have to be type 2 or most likely type 3. Then the next question is, how long will it take before you become type 3? Well, we are maybe 100 years away from being type 1. We're maybe a few thousand years from being type 2, and we're maybe 100,000 years from being type 3. And 100,000 years is nothing on a galactic scale. The age of the universe is, as I said, over 13 billion years old. And so once a civilization reaches the Planck energy, that is a type 3 civilization, space and time become your playground.
Created by aliens to mine gold. And I remember like, what? She goes, yeah, he was telling me about this. I go, what's his name? His name was like Jody. Because my friend Jody was telling me about this guy. And I'm like, can you call him? Call him up. And because it made sense to me, like, wait a minute, we were created as slaves to mine gold for this other planet? I was all balls deep in the UFOs. So I called this motherfucker. I go, do you remember what you were telling Gina? And he goes, yeah, there's this guy named Zacharias Sitchin. Look him up. He wrote a book called The 12th Planet. And I'm like, okay. So boom, got into it. I'm like, oh shit, I believe that shit. They got me hook, line, and sinker, man. But yeah, you know. And then
so Eddie, do you think that do you believe that whistleblower, like he's actually seeing the UFO?
I believe a lot of the people that see UFOs really believe they see it, and they just get set up. I think they're just.
But they're not seeing UFOs. They're seeing maybe a drone. They don't know the technology.
Holograms, drones, some high-level shit. They're pushing it so hard. It's so obvious.
That's what's
so
weird,
fucking obvious.
Is that they're pushing it.
It's so obvious.
When it goes mainstream, I'm like, what's going on here? What
No,
are they
dude,
trying to
come
distract
on,
us
dog.
from?
And then at the same time, the Biden crime family shit's coming out, dog. All that shit where they said Rudy Giuliani was fucking crazy.
Yeah.
He's a crackpot.
Yep.
2-3 years ago, they made him look like a fucking crackpot. And all he was doing, he goes, I got the laptop right here. We got it all right here. And the scariest part was they got 51 intelligence officers to sign off on it.
That's
That
crazy. How scary is that?
Scary. You had 51 guys bullshit?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
When
Scary.
They knew that it was legit in 2019.
Yeah, dude, scary. That's scary
That's
shit.
crazy.
Have you looked up the laptop
What's
shit?
scary is no one is facing any repercussions.
Zero. He got a slap on
What
the
about all
wrist.
those guys?
Not just him. I'm talking about the people who told everyone that it was Russian disinformation.
They suffer no consequences.
And you know what? They stick with it, though, because they're saying that the justice system is corrupt by saying that it's not.
Yeah.
They go, oh, they're lying, so it's just a lot of confusion.
Thank you, Jamie.
Dude, I went to the website where they released all his pictures and shit. That boy, a wild boy. He looks like a good time, I gotta be honest.
Oh,
Hey, can I have the ball one? Can I have the ball ice?
I'll get
Yes.
some more.
No,
That
that's
is
good.
ball ice, no?
This is not
Oh,
ball
sorry.
ice.
Yeah, you got
I
it.
want the ball ice.
I want the ball too, but I love you.
Thank you.
And you're talking
I owe you.
conspiracies.
I owe you.
I know you conspiracies, the best in the world.
Dude, I'm not, dude, I'm keeping my mouth shut, dog. When 51 intelligence officers say it's Russian disinformation when it's not, and
we
they
know
knew
for a
it,
fact, I know.
scary. What kind of country are we living in? And all the shit they're throwing at Trump, they're trying to get rid of that motherfucker,
Good
dude.
luck.
I'll say real
Makes it
clear.
bigger.
What is that? I'm keeping my shut. It just fucking rattled
No,
off.
I ain't saying
51
shit.
intelligence officers.
No, I'm saying what's already out there.
Keep it on.
Dude, I'm just saying what's out there,
yes.
dog.
Fuck,
You know what I mean?
Texas.
I'm not trying to get fucking killed. I'm good. I got him. I got plenty
Hold
good.
on, let me get some of that, Joe.
This
Shout
is,
to Bodega Cat.
Isn't that crazy, dude?
Balcones,
They could have
Texas.
got 10 guys to sign off on it, and that would have been a lot.
A lot.
They went 50 because they know if they get 50, it's gonna be no doubt. Everyone's gonna believe that shit, right? And they stick with it even today. The mainstream media, they still stick with it.
Let me ask you this. Why do they still keep singing the national anthem at a boxing fight? Because that shit takes so much time.
When I saw Gleason, Gleason was what I wanted to be. I just thought Jackie Gleason was just amazing, you know, and I want to be like that guy, you know, because he was incredible. And it was, people didn't realize he was a stand-up, you know.
I didn't know Gleason did stand-up.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
2-ton Tony Galenta was giving him shit. And
the boxer.
And Gleason heckled him, and Tony knocked him out.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, yeah. He was incredible, you know, because I met Art Carney.
You know, Jackie was obsessed with UFOs. Did you know that?
Nah, but I kind of dig it too, man.
There's a story. This guy told it to me. Some guy was a rock band dude. He told me the story, and I don't know if it's true. But the story was that Gleason was friends with Nixon, and Nixon said, "You want to see some shit?" And Nixon took him to
Area 51.
I don't think it was Area 51. I think it was Hangar 18, which is Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and I think it was outside of Columbus, Ohio, and they supposedly had some fucking crashed UFO there. And Gleason built a replica of it, or had a replica of it built in his fucking backyard in New York.
Wow.
They went to the Homestead Air Force Base outside of Miami, it says.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
There you go.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I got a bullshit version of it. Pull up the actual version. Where are you getting this from?
I just Googled it. I mean, it's a rumored story, so I don't know if it's...
Yeah, that's how I got it. I got it from a guy in a band. It might be bullshit, but he gave me some book on UFOs. And he was telling me about this, but that Jackie Gleason apparently was obsessed with UFOs.
Well, I believe there's got to be something out there.
Yeah.
I don't. We're it. I mean, that's it.
No,
right?
I don't believe we're it.
I did a lot of USO shows, and I've been around the world, and I was every time I've done. I was in off the coast of Turkey, someplace, and the commander of the base took me out for dinner afterwards, and I got him drunk. I got him pretty drunk. I was sober at the time. I got him pretty drunk, and I said, "Hey, man," he goes, "Let me ask you about Area 51." He goes. Got stone sober. He goes, "This conversation never happened," and he left. And I had to take a cab to find my way back to a nuke base that no one knows about. Right. So then I'm at the dunes. This is how long ago that was, and I'm with these guys who are in the Air Force, and they said, "Man, we really like your show. We're fans of yours." But I got them drunk. And I said, "Hey, man, what about Area 51?" And they said, "Mr. Clark, good night." And they walked away. So now. Me and Mike are golfing with these Blue Angels. And he goes, "You're going to ask him?" I go, "No." The second year, we golf with them again. I go, "All right, fellas, tell me about Area 51. They go, "Well," he goes, "I was flying a plane, and I had malfunction, and I had to land there. And they came out, and they pretty much blindfolded me, took me into a building, and they fixed my jet within 35 minutes. And then put me back in place. You were never here." And I went, "Oh, my God." So I don't know what's out there.
Yeah, but here's the thing. That was an area where they were testing all sorts of military equipment. They were testing different that's where the B-2 or the stealth bomber.
Right.
They were testing that there.
And the spy plane.
Yeah, they were testing shit.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of secret stuff there.
Right.
Didn't necessarily have to be aliens.
I understand that. And I'm hoping that there is.
But he's still trying to
But I'd love to go there, man. Oh, man. But you can't even drive. If you drive up there, Joe, by the time you get your camera out, they're on you.
Yeah.
And tell you, "Get out of here. We'll lock you up." You know, it's not good. So...
They don't even anymore. They've moved to a new area. They've actually, because it's so heavily scrutinized and because of Google Earth and all sorts of different ways you can see things, they've actually moved to another area.
Well, I read everything I can find about that too, and I think I read the book Area 51. It was 2 years ago, and basically at the end of the book, it was like Hitler had these, his guys experimenting with the Jews and put their arms on different ways, and had an aircraft that looked like a spaceship, and it crashed. And these people came out with crazy arms. They're aliens, and that was in the book, So that kind of shut the shit out of that.
I know that Hitler did experiment with some sort of disc type air vehicle. They did, but I don't know if they ever got it off the ground or what the deal was. But the most interesting story is the story of Robert Lazar, Bob Lazar, who was a guy who worked at Area 51, and he got fired because his wife was cheating on him. And they were recording all of his phone calls and taping all of his conversations, and they found out that his wife was cheating on him. They thought that he was going to be emotionally unstable. And so they didn't tell him why. They just released him. And so then he brings friends to watch these, what he said were alien crafts that they were experimenting with, and they were flying these things around that had some super advanced propulsion system that they were asking him to help back engineer, and he brought friends to do that, and then they got arrested for doing that. And when he did that, then he started talking about it. So he's been discredited by a bunch of people, but I don't know who's telling the truth. He says that they wiped his college record so that no one. But people said they went to school with him, and he definitely did work for the government, but under what capacity, who knows? But his story's fascinating, and I want it to be true. You hear it, you want it to be true.
Joe, they used to fly the team of people that worked at Area 51 from Burbank.
Yeah.
Every day, fly them in, they'd work, and then fly them back. It was like they didn't stay over.
There was that airport outside of Vegas. It was right outside where the Riviera was.
Yeah.
You could actually look out and see the airport. And they would fly the people from there in these unmarked jets.
Yeah, I want it to be true.
Oh, of course.